Guys, I'm going to be really, really quick. So I have to get started. I know that you guys aren't on yet and it was very impromptu, but this is just a quick word and I couldn't pre-record it. So I'm just going to go ahead here now. A quick word on confirmations. So confirmations are biblical. But I want to make a distinction really, really quickly. Hey, it's Tony, by the way. um, confirmations are biblical. Um, but there's a distinction between confirmations and signs, okay? Um, confirmations are from God, okay? They are from God. Um, whilst you can have signs and wonders, and people will mistake those for confirmations, okay? Let me make this, let me make this distinction really quickly. Before you get a particular car, you never see that car around, right? But then as soon as you buy this particular car, you see it every day. You get up in the morning, you walk out to your car, you're driving in that car. Now you see this particular vehicle all over town, everywhere. You see 50,000 of them, right? Those are not confirmations. So I want to make that distinction really, really quickly. But this is gonna be a quick video. I don't have a lot of time, but it's something that I know I get so many questions on. But actually, the Lord was dealing with me in this area. So your confirmations are biblical. They are biblical, and God likes to give them. He likes to give them. I'm gonna give you. I'm not gonna go into the scriptures per se, but I will tell you what you can look into. One of the most famous instances of confirmation, and these are your best confirmations. Your best confirmations will come through dreams and visions. Why? Because these are less likely to be perverted. And also dreams and visions, they come directly from the throne of God. Now, a dream or a vision may be filtered through what you already know or have experienced, but they come alone from God. So those are the best confirmations, and I'll tell you why. You see in Genesis, you see Joseph, the son of Jacob. You see him in Genesis um, experiencing his gifting. Maybe not for the very first time, but certainly the most important and most famous time. So he goes to his parents and his brothers and say, "Hey, I had a dream." And then the next night, it looks to be consecutive in the scripture. The next night, he has another dream. Now the dreams look nothing alike, but they mean the same thing. This was important. Confirmations come in sets of twos or threes. Now, when you get outside of twos and threes, it's possible, but God's confirmations, they normally come in twos or threes. And there's a law of first mention in theology. We call it the law of first mention. And you see this specifically in Genesis a lot of times, things happening in twos, maybe things happening in threes. And so this is an instance where you see a dream happening in twos. Why does it matter? Well, later on, you know the story. Joseph goes through all of this great lengthy journey, and he finds himself in prison, but then he's brought before the Pharaoh. Now Pharaoh needs Joseph because he heard that he's a great interpreter of God. Now Pharaoh, who is not a godly man, and this is how you know a confirmation. You'll know when something definitely comes from God, because he will use anybody, anything, a donkey. He will use anyone or anybody to get his point across, so that you know that yes, you have heard from God. Now Pharaoh has these two dreams. Seemingly they're a riddle, and they don't mean the same thing at all. But Joseph says, because he has experience in dreaming, he's a skilled interpreter, but he's also a prophet. He tells Pharaoh, no, these dreams actually mean the same thing. Although they look nothing alike, they mean the same thing, and they're confirming one another. So dreams are the absolute best confirmations. That's why the interpretation is important. It's so important that you have a correct interpretation. They mean these dreams saved a nation. They saved a nation. They saved the tribes of Israel. So this is how important confirmations are. Then you have confirmations that let's see. You have confirmations that you ask for. So God will give you confirmations freely. He will let you know that thing you thought you heard about, that what you wanted, that thing you thought it was you, but it was me. So that's what he's letting Joseph know. He lets Joseph know, no, the sun, the moon, and the stars, they will bow to you. These sheaves will bow to your wheat. And then he has this lifelong experience, and he goes before Pharaoh, and he has a really, really good understanding of Pharaoh's dreams because he's experienced this before. Then you have Gideon, who's a mighty man of valor in Judges, in the book of Judges, what, 636. um it may be one of the most famous instances of a confirmation. But Gideon, who is one of the fathers of faith, a mighty man of valor, a man that God loved and trusted, is asking for a confirmation. Now Gideon is about to go into war, and he is a little outnumbered, and he gets a little concerned. He says, God, how do I know that you have told me to go into battle and that we will certainly win? And he says, I will put this fleece on the ground. If I pick it up and it's dry after the dew, then I know I've heard from you. And then Gideon says, he gets this confirmation, and then he humbly goes back to the Father and says, I know that you said what you said, but I'm still feeling like I need another confirmation. And he says, now will you do the opposite for me? And certainly God comes forth and he does the opposite, and the fleece is now dry, or vice versa. The fleece is now dry. So you have the instance of confirmation in dreams. You have the instance in confirmation through a sign or a wonder or an act of God, where you have asked God for a specific thing. Now, this is where you have to be very, very careful. When you are asking God for a very specific thing, the enemy can also hear you. That's why it's important to, and especially if you're one who talks to friends and all that, about, be careful when you are asking. The enemy is just as into your story as you are, and so he is quick to pervert things so that you will think that you have heard from God, or you will think that you have not heard from God, whatever the case may be. But so we have to be very, very careful as to what we say, and it's not walking in fear or anything. But when you're saying a lot of things, when you're desperate for an answer, for a confirmation, the enemy is so willing to give it to you. So you have to be certain that this is not like, ooh, if this is the job for me, then I'm going to see a red car pass me in the next 5 minutes. Well, that may or may not be your job, and we may or may not have heard from God concerning that by seeing a red car or not. We have to be realistic, and don't be afraid to ask God for the hard confirmations, just as Gideon did, because he is able to do it. So you have those two instances of confirmation. Then you have something else that I think is really beautiful. It's one that I talk about all the time on the channel. I absolutely love it, because this is where there are two instances. There are more, but there are two instances that I love where God will go ahead of you and give a confirmation. Hezekiah, the great king, prophet. Now Hezekiah, the king, has lived his life. He's been completely obedient to God. He's a man with lots of favor, but he is about to die. And the prophet goes to him and he tells Hezekiah, listen, get your house in order. You're going to die. Probably told him the exact day and everything. Now, Hezekiah, knowing his track record with God, knowing that the prophet is Isaiah, is the prophet. You understand? Isaiah is the prophet, and you don't need to question the prophet. And Hezekiah did not question the prophet, but what he did, based on his relationship with the Father, turns his face to a wall and says, Father, I know that this is what you're saying is going to happen, but I'm asking you for an extension. And God says, I will grant you, Hezekiah, 15 more years. And he says, instead of, Hezekiah says, well, all right. How will I know? And God says, I will go ahead of you and I will tell you how you will know. And he says, I'll do you one better. You tell me how you would like me to confirm this for you. And there's a word I did. It's called, how do you want it? And it's the whole story of Hezekiah. It's called, how do you want it? Because God is so ready to give you a confirmation, because he so much wants to give you that thing that you desire, because he's the one that gave you the desire. And I'll tell you why it's so important to him. But he says, Hezekiah, I'll go ahead of you and I'll do you one better. How do you want me to prove to you that I have granted you the 15 years? Do you want me to turn the sundial forward or backward? Do you want me to stop time? Or do you want me to send time forward, or do you want me to send it backward? Because I want you to know that I have granted you this request. And so God has come through dreams for confirmations. He has come through signs and wonders. And now he is saying another sign and wonder, but I will go ahead of you this time, and I will turn the clock back for you I will cause time to stand still so that you will know, Hezekiah, you have my favor, you have my grace, and I have extended your life 15 years. One of the biggest confirmations that we see, but many people don't see it as a confirmation, but this is God. When something is so much from God, as this story is, God will go ahead and he will do it for you. Now, this is a more rare instance, but I can guarantee you it's happened to me. I have seen God. I have sat with Christ, and I have experienced angels on many occasions. And there are some instances where God himself will come and he will give you a confirmation. So you have the Virgin Mary. Virgin Mary is visited by the angel Gabriel, and Gabriel comes to her. Mary, you've been favored amongst women. You will have this child. You will call him Emmanuel. He will save the world from their sins. Da 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 da. Mary says, hold on. The only time she this was not doubt, and it's there to let you know that needing a confirmation is not, it's not just doubt, or it's not unbelief. They're really two different things. However, God allows for our unbelief so that we can be provoked to ask for more, so that he can show you himself. He can show you himself in a new way so that you do know that you have heard from God. Now, this confirmation is very unique, but it's that confirmation you need when you're making a big decision. So Mary says, how will this happen, seeing I know not a man? And the angel Gabriel said, listen, you this is certainly going to happen. And he doesn't tell her exactly what he's going to do. But then the angel, she goes to Joseph, her betrothed, and she tells him the story. But before Joseph can put her away, he is now also visited by the angel Gabriel. This is God coming to now Joseph to confirm what he has told Mary. This is the thing that happens when it comes to it happens a lot of times in marriages, or relationships, or decisions that involve two or more people, where God will tell you something, and then he will visit someone else and tell them the same thing, and that person will say, oh, I was thinking we should do the same thing. Or you would say, well, this person I believe is my wife. Well, this person will also be confirmed to that person. You don't need to prove it at all, because God will when it is God, he will go ahead and he will prove himself, and he will visit a person. So there are different instances and types of confirmation, but this is certainly one of the most beautiful, in that Mary could have been I mean, honestly, this was not the place that you wanted to be. As a young woman in society, especially in that day. Probably wouldn't matter much now, but in this time, God, knowing the circumstances and situation, went ahead and kept Joseph from making a grave mistake, and visited Joseph basically in the flesh through Gabriel, and tells him that, yes, I have visited Mary, and what you heard is true. So these are instances of confirmation. Now, this is the most important thing about confirmations. Confirmations, when you first get a word from God concerning a matter, it's a beautiful time. Oh, it's wonderful. You can believe it. Confirmations are not there so that you will believe it when it starts. Confirmations are there so that you believe it in the hard times. Because when God has to go ahead of you and give you a confirmation, trust and believe, there's going to be a moment of doubt. There's going to be a moment where you think you misunderstood him, when you find yourself Joseph in a pit, when you find yourself Joseph in Potiphar's house being accused of rape, when you find yourself Mary about to be put away silently, knowing good and well you have never slept with anybody. See, those are the moments when your confirmations matter. And I know the Lord wanted me to come before you today, because I don't want any of you to lose faith, to lose hope, to misunderstand what you saw, what you heard, what you dreamed, what you saw in a vision, for your own psyche, your own analysis. This is certainly God that you heard, and that thing does belong to you. Go back. It's why I'm always forcefully telling you guys, write your dreams, audio your dreams and your visions. All of these things matter. All of these conversations you have with God, these visitations that you may have had, these encounters, they matter, because there's gonna come a time where you question that thing, and God is saying, it don't. I'm not worried about. I'm not challenged. I'm not intimidated by your questions. Better yet, I want to give you the confirmation that you need, because you have certainly heard from me, Gideon, Joseph, Mary, Hezekiah. That thing is for you. This is your confirmation. If you have dreamed a thing and you have seen a thing and it looks really, really rough right now, and it looks like it's not going to come to pass, like it's not able to come to pass, they may have said no. She may have said no. They may have said not right now. It may look like they're rejecting you. It may look like the finances have not come together for that thing to come to pass. You don't have the resources. You don't have the connections. Listen, it always looks that way, but your confirmation is an indicator that that thing is from God. Those confirmations, go back to them. Go back to your journal. Go back to what God showed you. That thing is certainly coming to pass. And if you need more confirmation, then do not hesitate to ask God for it. Ask God for it, because He alone is able to do exceedingly, abundantly, above all that we are able to ask, think, or imagine. And so He wants you to be provoked to ask Him, so that He can then be provoked to prove it to you. And that's all I have to say. I just wanted this to be your confirmation. Do not even mistake your doubt. Doubt is all right with God. Mary had that moment of doubt. Hezekiah, one of the greatest kings that ever lived, had that moment of doubt. And the prophet Isaiah visited Hezekiah and told him, God will listen. Isaiah he was never wrong about anything. But here it is, God will make a prophet look like they're wrong for you. I don't care who told you you were gonna die. I don't care when they said your expiration date was. I don't care what the loan officer said. I don't care what sign they put outside your house that this thing is being foreclosed on. When God says yes, nobody can say no. When God says that thing is a thing and it belongs to you, there is nothing that nobody, not even a prophet Isaiah, can do about it. Because when you turn your face to a wall and you say, hold on, I know my track record with you, and I know that you are able to do it, God will say, because you have been faithful, because you believe me, I will do that thing, and then I will prove it to you, and I will go ahead of the prophet, and he will have to look wrong. I will make it look like a prophet lied. Now, Isaiah never lied, but because of Hezekiah's faith, because he knew that he could ask God for a thing, God granted him that thing, and then he proved that thing. God will baffle the prophets for you. He will baffle prophets for you. He will baffle doctors for you. He will make people look like fools for you. Yep, the proof is in the pudding. Yep, I did the crime. Yep, I did it. Yep, it happened. Yes, I lost all the money. Yep, it got foreclosed on. Yep, I went bankrupt. Whatever the case may be. But the marriage is still mine. The business is still mine. The baby is still mine. All of it still belongs to you. And I just needed to say that for you today, because that thing that you have been toiling about and you have been losing sleep about, you did not know if you heard from God. See, you were sure in the beginning, I certainly have heard from God. Mary thought, and she knew. Joseph knew, but they're fleeing to Egypt. And I'm pretty sure by the time they couldn't find a room at their family's house, that looks really bad. The inn that Mary and Joseph were looking for a room in was not just an inn like a hotel. This was a family house. Now, how your family don't have room for you? See, God will allow your circumstances to get so bad that it looks completely impossible for your situation to be rectified, or for that promise over your life to come to pass. But he said, guess what? You don't need an inn, Mary, Joseph. You need a word. You need an angel. That's what you need. That's what you need. You don't need an approval from a loan officer. You don't need an approval from man. You don't need any of that. You need some time alone with God and a confirmation from the one true and living God. You need a visitation. You ask God concerning that thing for a visitation. Do not allow the enemy to guilt you and make you feel like you don't deserve a thing because you have doubt. Whenever you have a doubt, say, well, Lord, this is just another opportunity for you to prove yourself strong and mighty. In our weakness, his strength is made perfect. Let him prove himself. That thing belongs to you. I love you, and that is it. Mwah.